all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
And I'd like to acknowledge on this beautiful day that we're meeting on the shared traditional ancestral territory of the Abbotsford and Sumas First Nations. Okay, looking for approval of our minutes from May 28th, 2019.
We still haven't. So moved.
I guess I gotta get into
Ah,
do a little
fill
bit.
in
I gotta
Stan.
do a little voting here.
Trustees Anderson.
Okay, thank you. Too busy singing. All right. So again,
So moved.
thank you. Trustee
Second.
Wilson, Trustee Rye. There we go. And approval of consent items.
So moved.
Trustee Rye. Trustee Latham. And we have some delegations. I'll turn it over to Superintendent Godden.
Great. Well, it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Pearson here, Mr. Federley, to introduce us to our students. This has been a long tradition in this district where we've done incredibly well provincially and nationally at skills competition. So I'd like to turn it over to you to introduce our guests and tell us a little bit about their exploits in Nova Scotia.
Well, I'm going to keep it brief because I know you want to hear from them more than me. As you know,
Could you stand at the podium, because believe it or not, we're live streamed and
okay,
unless you kind of stand there, we can't hear you, or the folks at home can't hear you.
okay, sounds good. Didn't know I was on live. As you know, we do the regional skills. We coordinate that. All successful candidates behind me here, and I'll introduce their names, have received gold at the regionals. They advanced to provincials. They all received gold, and they had the opportunity to go to Halifax in May. Dean and myself went, and I can't appreciate his help enough, as the instructor of the TV and film program, but also having the willingness to take the time from his classes and help with the supervision of these fine young men and women. So we have, we can start over here, Taylor Smith, electrical. Okay, he received a bronze. Can you maybe just come up here? Pardon?
I got fourth.
You got fourth?
Yeah.
I thought you got a bronze.
No, that was Alan.
Okay. Alan is not with us. Okay. Alan Lin is in Taiwan. He received a bronze in automotive service. Leandro, okay, carpentry. Gold, regionals, provincials, did not place at the nationals. Okay. We've got Blake Gervais, Blake, gold regionals, provincials, and a bronze in Halifax, AutoCAD. And we got Ashneet Lally and Soni Karana, gold medalists in TV and film. So there you have it. It was an exciting event. It was a long journey. We got these guys up, and Dean and I picked them up. Taylor was already out there with his mom. He came the Friday before, but the others traveled with Dean and I. We picked them up at 5:30 at Abbey Senior and put them on the airplane and had them there and into the hotels and late nights and early mornings. But it was exhausting, and the time difference kind of hurt the first morning, I think, when we were waking up at 6. and it was really to our time. And trying to go to bed at midnight when you know you should be going to bed and it's 8, it was a little bit tough. But they came through. It was a great experience, and I'll let you ask any questions to them because they're the ones that did it. So they brought back some gold, bronze, and just to participate at that level is an achievement. To be in the top 12, 13 of the nation, all these individuals will move on to some amazing things. Already employed. Okay, they can't all get here sometimes because we're pulling them out of work, right? So I appreciate you guys taking the time to come here tonight, and sincere congratulations for all your efforts, for sure. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Colleagues, hey, Trustee Anderson.
I would just like each of you, starting at the end here, and just tell us a little bit of your experience, what you went through, and your area of expertise.
So, TV and video production was a 2-day competition. The first day we had 7 hours to create a minute 30 to minute 45 video. And we were given the topic before the competition, so that was kind of nice because we got to plan what we wanted to see in our video. It's the first time they've done something like that. And so we had 7 hours to create a video on persuading parents that trades and technology is a viable career choice.
Wonderful.
We need to
Good
see
job.
around. We already love it, yes.
And for the second day, we got 4 hours to make a 45-second video, and the topic was given the day of, and the topic was like a top 5 style video, kind of like BuzzFeed. And we chose a more professional kind of outlook on it, and we did top 5 jobs in the trades right now. And we actually got to get Kate Campbell to be in our intro and outro from HGTV.
Oh, yeah.
So I was in architectural drafting and design competition. It was a 2-day competition. First day was a 6-hour competition, and they gave us blueprints and we had to design a house in 3D on Revit. And then the next day was also another 6-hour competition, and it had to add on a hair salon adjacent to the house built in day 1.
Well, I did carpentry, and it was also 2 days and 12 hours total working both days. And I had to build. It was a really weird sled with a deck with posts, and it was just something to test all your skills. So you had to know the math for all that, and have even spacing and nice cuts and just problem solving. They gave us a set of plans and then a bunch of numbers missing, so fill it in.
Wow.
That's how it is out there, actually.
I competed in the electrical wiring section, and it was all based off of more of a residential outlook. There was one of my walls that was it already had drywall on it, and I had to figure out how to add electrical boxes and lights and switches off of that. And then pretty much everything else was stud wall with no drywall, and I had to run everything and basically wire a simulation of a small house.
Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. Congratulations to all of you. You clearly did our district proud. I do have a question, actually, to Sonia Nashneet. First, where did you get your concept for your projects from when you did that, talking about trades? And have you given us a copy so that we can view it? Because I think I'd be really interested in seeing it. So somebody could find a way to get that to us. So your concept, where did that come from?
So Skills upload a scope document on their website for every competition area. So it was available to us on that scope document, and it was available I believe 2 months before the competition, after provincials. So and our videos are available on YouTube, and they're available on my channel and the Skills Canada channel.
Under your name?
Under my name, yes.
Excellent.
And like most other videos that are usually for regionals and provincials as well, they were all based around trades.
Yeah.
And we've been practicing trade videos for broadcasting as well, since we do have all the trades at our school. So that did benefit us in nationals as well.
Yeah.
I just really want to thank you for promoting Abbotsford Trades programs educationally. I mean, that's kudos to you. And your moms and dads, thank them, because, it takes a lot of support. We heard from a graduate today who talked about mom prodding him along. And it's just really great to know that you can get here and do this and be distinct in where you are. So congratulations.
My dad, for the TV and film, when I need a project done for promotion, that's very expensive. But I've often pick up the phone and call Dean and say, hey, listen, do you have a crew that could put on a small video feed for our heavy equipment, for our culinary program? And they're the go-to, and Sonia, okay, and Ashneet and others have helped put together just some amazingly professional, promotional material for our programs, but at the same time, was helping them keep keen for the competition.
Of course.
I would just, Blake, you were mentioning 12-hour days. Did you get paid time and a half or double time?
No, it was only 6 hours per day, so.
Oh, per day, so it's a total of 12, okay. Okay, I was just wondering if you worked 12 hours
No.
besides running short on time for flying over there.
Yes, Trustee Paul.
So were all of you planning to enter this as your field of employment after this, or are any of you just did part of this as a different kind of experience? Is this all of your, where you're going in life with your careers?
For me, yes.
Yeah. So this just solidified it for you that this is really what you want to do and?
Yeah.
Solidified it for the employers that have them on their,
I'm
on
gonna
their staff.
butt in here and say you're all hired. I'm gonna start a company and you're hired. Others? Well, congratulations, you make the board look very good, and we appreciate that, but we also appreciate leadership. It doesn't happen without that leadership, but we're very proud of the trades program in our school district. I think it's the biggest in the province, and we're seeing the results of that, and we love that. Thank you so very much.
Thank
For coming here tonight, on behalf of my colleagues on the board, we're going to say thank you with a small gift. So congratulations and thanks. All right. And we're missing one person. Is anybody know them or?
I can get
that's right.
information to Alan. Alan is in Taiwan.
He's in Taiwan. Well, who wants to go and give it to him?
I do.
Thank you. I look forward to the video.
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
This on YouTube, right?
Yeah, so
Give it to
you
him,
can
give
send
it
us
to
the
Oh, yeah, oh,
Canada
yeah,
Gold
yes,
Medal video,
yeah.
National
Good, thanks.
2019,
Okay.
and the results will come up. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Well done.
Very much.
Thank you, thanks. And another
Chair
yearly
Peterson?
special event for us. Yes.
I was just gonna say, Kayla just let me know that this has already long been posted on our website. If you just go to the district website, the links are all live to look at all their videos and all of their things, so
Thank you for that. We should have known that. We know that we would have got that up. So, community matters. Now, we have two representatives of the board on the committee, Trustee Latham and Trustee Anderson. So they're gonna be our presenters today.
I'm just waiting to be moved to the next.
Oh, we're going to the, yeah, all right. There we are.
Please. Thank you. So, we do a staff report, and I wanted to read from that first, before we do the presentation, I hope that's okay. So this is our 2019 Community Matters Award. The Abbotsford School District has a long history of community involvement in our schools, and many individuals and organizations contribute countless hours of volunteer service to enable our students to achieve success in school. And while the board has taken the opportunity on many occasions to publicly thank these individuals and organizations, the board recognized the need to establish a formal recognition process, and so this is it, the Community Matters Award. Let me scroll down here. The Community Matters Award is presented annually to organizations who have exceeded their community service mandate and have made a significant and deliberate contribution to the Abbotsford School District students. A total of 12 nominations were received this year for the 2019 Community Matters Award. The award selection committee selected the Abbotsford Community Foundation to receive this year's award. Greatly deserved, I must say. The nomination recognizes the contribution the organization has made to over 5,000 school district students through the scholarship and bursary programs. And we've all attended graduation in the last couple of weeks and have seen many students walk across the stage thanks to the work of the Abbotsford Community Foundation. And to date, 5 million has gone back into the community and to the school district. Now, I believe the assets are, is there $11 million approximately?
The mentioned are just almost getting close to $12 million.
Okay. And so you're doing wonderful work and great service in our community. I'd like to introduce to you, all of us, Lorna Hart, who is the board chair, and if you don't mind stepping up to the front so you get on TV. Wendy Neufeld, who is the executive director, and John Morrow. I don't see Cal here. Okay, so Phil, are you helping?
Yeah, come on, do something. And of course, one bit of clarification from this is that it most certainly is a board decision on this. The board approves the recipient. So, and it might have said, it said that a little differently in that, but it is a board decision.
So I'm gonna let Phil
So-
take the award
Okay.
and read it.
Community Matters Award presented to Abbotsford Community Foundation in recognition of your commitment and contributions to Abbotsford School District students, June 2019. So if you would hold this, we can, she's gonna, yeah.
I might arrange you guys a bit differently if that's okay.
I also want to congratulate you on 40 years. You're celebrating your 40th anniversary, and I had the pleasure of attending at the Reach when you did the donor recognition evening. But at that time, you presented 15 Smart and Caring awards, and I hadn't been to that before, and I went, wow, there's a lot of these organizations that impact our school students, and so we're very grateful that those organizations can continue their work through, money that is given by the Abbotsford Community Foundation, so thank you.
Here, just so we can get our logo in the back.
Alright.
Okay, we have to move, we don't break.
It would be good.
I know it might not fit at all, but so if you can just take one step backwards. Perfect. And then a little bit closer. Phil, thank you, sir. Thank you. Ray, I just need you to move out of the way, please. All right, and 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Thank you very much. That works.
Wonderful.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well done. And we'll refer you to the plaque up front here, and you'll see that your name is already on here. This is our plaque to recognize all our past winners.
That's Wendy fast.
Yes, that's Wendy. Sorry. So thank you, folks. Thank you. And please feel no obligation to have to stick through the rest of the meeting. I know you have probably busy nights, so we do thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. Just one more convocation left. Asia. on the
Asia, oh, okay.
25th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next section, I'm gonna turn it over to Lieutenant Goddard. Summary of changes to admin procedures.
So, under board policy 11, as it notes there, if there are significant changes to or new administrative procedures, I'm required to bring them to the board for information. We had some discussion earlier in the year about AP 210. but I also want to bring to your attention a new administrative procedure, which is AP 420, which is related to impairing substances. I think you can imagine with the changes to cannabis law, employers around the country have to attend to ensuring that they have policies in place to deal with those substances in the workplace. So that's what this is intended to do. You will note that particular administrative procedure speaks not just to consequences, but also the commitment that the district has to a healthy work environment and to provide support to employees who use or misuse substances. So the last change also to AP 210 had to do, I think the last time we had a discussion, it had to do with, there was some question about alternative delivery. And as I noted at the time, the ministerial policy for alternative delivery rests only with the sexual health curriculum. And so the amendment that I made to this administrative procedure was to make the declaration that parents have a right, obviously, to pull their kid, but if they do, that the alternative delivery policy applies only to sexual health and not to any other curricular areas. So with that, I think I will just entertain any questions that you might have about these two administrative procedures.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. I have two questions. I'll start with my first thought and then I'll move into my question. And I'm just going to more ask the question rather vaguely if everyone at the table is aware of what 420 is.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd point that out, being that it is
Serendipitous.
Serendipitous. There you go. I wanted to be sure that my memory served me correctly, and it did. I did go back and view the February, I think, 26th meeting, 26th, 28th, whatever that was. And there were two further requests to the changes on the policy, or AP 210 procedure that were requested. I requested, the board supported, and superintendent advised he would include. One of them is under social considerations that we would include the entire human rights code list. The shopping list doesn't include all from the human rights, not even in this particular document, as well as we requested that we add the ministerial policy regarding learning resources appended through a hyperlink is fine, and neither of those are there, and I was just wondering when those would be added.
They could be added
Do you know when?
immediately.
Thank
They're
you.
links, right? So
Okay, well, and the first one isn't about a link in the human rights shopping list, as it were. It's regarding the actual language. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Questions, comments? Okay. Yes. Trustee Anderson.
I have a number of these that just popped up, so I don't know whether we have time to go through them now, or if later on we could discuss this again.
You have a number of questions
Yes.
related to this?
Yes, and I was just thinking that maybe we could discuss a lot of this later on.
Well, most certainly if it is
Well,
significant amount of our time at this point, I guess we will take that offline if you're okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I just felt that there's quite a few questions, and I just felt that it was appropriate to ask them another time.
And so you're comfortable with us taking that offline, and maybe you have a discussion with the superintendent?
Yes.
All right? Is that
That's
is that how you would prefer to have it?
Well, I would like it for the trustees, I mean.
Okay, well, these are the questions, we probably need to have it now here.
And that's what I wanted to suggest,
We're going
that this is a public meeting.
Yeah.
Any questions should be
Yes.
in the public meeting.
Okay, on the May 2013 AP 210, number 3, why was the trustees and parents removed from the District Learning Resource Review Committee? from that procedure in 2013. It says here, parents, guardians, to consult with school staff about resources, but it says a district learning resource review committee consists of educators, a trustee representative, and parents. And I don't see any trustees. Why were trustees removed?
So, I'll just, this topic came up earlier, and as I mentioned in the staff report now, and as I mentioned then, that administrative procedure was dated, and it predated the redesigned curriculum, which has, as I've mentioned before, the redesigned curriculum has big ideas, curricular competencies, and core competencies, and the idea is that anything could be a learning resource. So the idea that you could have a learning resource committee sitting to review resources used in the district is fallacious. It would never ever occur because you would be meeting forever because the amount of resources across all the curricular areas that are used is significant, which is why I retooled the administrative procedure to put the burden of responsibility on the professionals who make those decisions and strengthened the appeal and challenge process because I happen to be in a school, and the classic example of that was even today when I was at a school where some kids were demonstrating their understanding about invisible voices. And one of the interesting things was that for every child there, each of them chose to use a different way to demonstrate their understanding. The teachers had a variety of resources from the time they did this unit in the first semester to the second semester. And to think that those teachers, by virtue of having learned how the kids learned and made changes to how they would deliver instruction, to think that the teacher now would have to submit those resources to a committee who could somehow return and improve it is just, it's really an impossibility, because you multiply that by the 1,200 teachers we have in the district, it's just not a reasonable or practical thing, which is why the ministry backed away from that, which is why I think from a policy standpoint, we have to do the same, and we really have to trust the responsibility, give the responsibility to our teachers to make that determination, and then have a robust and thoughtful process for how one might challenge that if a teacher makes a decision that a parent or somebody feels is inappropriate. So that's the long answer to the question.
Okay, it's just a matter that when something is made that's very controversial, the trustees hear about it personally from phone calls. So over in the January 20th AP 210, number 3, under 3.4, the challenge of a learning resource by any parent will result in a thoughtful review of the resource. Now, if they don't know what's being taught, how can they remove their child? It's after the fact that they remove their child.
Well, that situation exists all the time. I mean, there has to be some ongoing communication and some expectation that if there are materials and content in a course that a teacher suspects is problematic, that they would engage the parent in that. If I'm doing a unit on weather, it might not be something that I would communicate with a parent about unless they were, interested in supporting the classroom. But again, it's an issue in my mind of judgment. That if I'm dealing with material that is potentially problematic, then I have a responsibility to communicate that with my principal and with the parents. So that's how that is intended to happen, and that's what happens all the time now. Now, if it does not happen, again, what the administrative procedure does is that there's a process for dealing with that.
Okay. On 5.3.2, under the reconsideration committee, they may invite the questioner and teacher to attend instead of will invite. Why would that not be will invite instead of may? That's 532.
532. Well, I mean, there's a committee that's there, and I would leave that to the discretion of the members of the committee. If they don't need the person there because the documentation they have in front of them is sufficient, then they would not need to. So it's a judgment that they would make based on if they have sufficient information to respond to the concerns or not.
Okay, I'll put it there. I have a lot more, but that's.
Well, but in supporting Trustee Ryan's concern, if you need questions answered, it probably needs to be here. No? Okay.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. I think we've had this discussion at this table before, and I think it would be, and we've had this discussion as far as we have a certain culture in Abbotsford that may differ from some of the other school districts, and plus because we have new teachers coming on board, maybe even teachers who've taught in other districts for a considerable time. I think there's two ways to handle it. One, yes, there's a grievance process, but up front, when the teachers first come in, it'd be very important for us to go through this and say, these are the expectations we have of you. Not just assume just because it's a policy or an administrative procedure, they're gonna know about it. Especially something like this, because the internet is open to all now, the younger teachers coming in may not have the proper filter that they should have, being 25, right?
Younger than that.
And so they're not parents yet, and so they probably, once they're parents, I think they would change a lot of their view on that. And so I think it'd be important for us to make sure that teachers coming into our district, we head them off at the pass, make sure that they understand our expectations of them, so that we have less possibility of grievances down the road. So,
I agree. Now, what I will say is, this is an important administrative procedure. There are a lot of things that a new teacher needs to know about what they can and cannot do. This is very important, but so is the other one, right? You think about it, and so we have, as part of our partnership with the ADTA, to have some orientation to new employees, and I think it's a fair point that over the last little while, we've had a lot of new teachers, just like a lot of other districts, and so I think the opportunity that you take to coach them up about these things is really important because of the volume of new teachers that we have in our district. It's not just 4 or 5, it's 30 new teachers that we have. And so there's an opportunity, I think, for us to teach them about that and how to do it. One of the things I think a lot of you already know this, is that our new teachers are very conversant in the redesigned curriculum. They don't know the old curriculum. They only know this one. But one of the things that they don't have is experience. And so it's part of the thing that we do as a part of the mentorship program and places like that where we do need to teach and support our new teachers in the expectations we have in the district. So you'll get no disagreement with that.
just one more comment if I could. So thank you so much for noting that the parent has a choice of removing their, because we can't assume that parents know that, right? And so as long as they realize that we're not responsible for alternative delivery, but they still have the right to remove their child, it's very important for parents, so thank you for that.
And just to follow up, Trustee Neufeld, on your first comment, so we can assume then that new teachers will have this part of their orientation,
That's right.
that, this is, as you say, this is an important issue in our community, and
So it's 420.
yeah, yes, and so it's 420. What a number.
Trustee Moser.
I just have one more question for the superintendent, if you don't mind. It's just around the AP 420, and the date being, was it effective the date that is on the document?
It has not yet been posted, so I think there's just a date on it. My procedure is typically to, in the creation process, is to certainly consult with our staff about it, but it is in August. I mean, it's produced here, but it's in August when this is presented to all of our principals with the expectation that this go to a staff meeting to communicate.
So this is not,
419.
We
I'll
should,
find a new
no,
number.
sir, I think we should change the title because I just think it's too tongue in cheek.
it does
There will
have
be some who, there will be some who will
Yeah.
note that,
Yes, they will.
including some of us.
It's too tongue in cheek, and I just think that in order for it to be serious and not a laugh, anyways.
But there's an alternate suggestion to that. If it's 420, people will read it.
Yeah.
Yes,
There you go, that's-
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite a coincidence.
Oh,
Must have been.
No, it's not a coincidence.
I don't think it's a
Somebody had
coincidence.
And this is a test for us.
Yeah.
See who's paying attention.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments, questions? Trustee Anderson, are you satisfied?
Yeah, there was others, but I think some of them have been answered, so we'll just go along.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, okay, next item. Secretary, treasurer, no, are we?
No, I think.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
no, yes.
So, school districts are required to have an enhancement agreement. An enhancement agreement is in fact, an agreement between the indigenous community and boards designed to improve the achievement of indigenous students. This is our third one, believe it or not. And they typically span 5 years. The consultation process for this one took a number of months, and invariably, what you have seen, if you recall, enhancement agreements that we had before, it typically had to do with improving literacy and numeracy, graduation, sense of belonging is typically been the goals. These ones are, I'll say, somewhat related. But you will see some differences here. I think in part because the board will recall the Auditor General's report. You know, it was a report card for the province on the performance of Indigenous students, and while it was a B, it was you're doing well considering. It was also extended that there are still tremendous discrepancies in some parts of this province in how Indigenous students achieve relative to non-Indigenous students, which is why they've continued with the expectation around the enhancement agreement. So one of the differences you will note in this particular agreement is some focus on the issues related to equity. It's one of the big pieces that the ministry has invited schools to consider in terms of equitable access to programs, which is, again, trustees, you know about the tripartite agreement, which is part of the context in which that was created to increase access of Indigenous students to transportation, to extracurricular activities, to all the other things. So this is quite an undertaking, and something that I think this board should be very, very proud of. Because our Indigenous students achieve extremely well relative to the province, though not indistinguishable from non-Indigenous students in our district. As you know, there's still about a 10% gap in a number of the assessments. In most districts, it's closer to 20, but we still have work to do here. What was quite enlightening for me was the ceremony, the signing ceremony that we had recently at the Aboriginal Education Center, where the chiefs, board chair, as well as Métis representative signed off on the document and really recognized, I think, this tremendous amount of work that I'll say the whole staff, but I'll give some kudos to Darlene McDonald here, who has just done an incredible amount of work. Consultations like this, as you know, are very, very difficult and time consuming because you have to spend a lot of time listening and not a lot talking. And it was very, very hard work, but appreciated. So I bring this to the board for approval, but also with some thanks and gratitude to Mrs. Darlene McDonald for her leadership in developing the agreement.
And yeah, and I think we really should be pleased with the amount of consultation there was with our Indigenous friends and and the good feeling that existed in the room where the ceremony. Now we have to formally approve it here, but
Move to approve with thanks to Darlene, of course, and
okay, we got it. So a seconder,
Second with a comment.
seconder, trustee Newfeld, trustee Fry, trustee Newfeld, and a comment.
On goal 3, and I'm gonna raise it, and it's the third checkpoint under values, reducing the overrepresentation of Indigenous students related to discipline. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't think it's a race or cultural thing, because I know boys get disciplined more than girls, and we could be saying that about not an overemphasis of male discipline either. And so I'm just trying to think. I'm sure it's not. Because it's almost like assuming that because they're Indigenous, they're getting disciplined more, or is it? And how do we reduce that if someone crosses the line? It's irregardless of culture, race, gender, whatever.
Right. So what I would qualify there is, so I'll use your example. There is a disproportionate number of boys in special education category. There's a disproportionate number of boys who are suspended. There are a disproportionate number of boys in our alternate programs.
Okay, that's
right? So the question that you might ask is, do we treat boys differently from girls? And on the surface, you'll say no, right? But the question is, do we treat them the way they need to be treated in order to be successful? And that's part of what this is about. You have to be careful with the wording, because part of the challenges, we know, for instance, at Bakerview, kids do really well there. We saw that at grad. The kids do really well there. And so the question would be, how is it that these boys, and we have a disproportionate number of Indigenous students at Bakerview, and they do well there, how is it that they do well there and not in the other places? And how is it that they fail into the alternate school? So these are real tough questions for us to ask ourselves, because the kids do well, but we have to also ask ourselves the question, how do we establish our programs, our instruction, so that, whether it's boys or Indigenous students or not, end up being disproportionately dealt with, right? And so it's a hard question to ask, because I think, we hope our system is blind to that, but, we know that, and the boy example is a great one, because we know that there are some things that boys tend to gravitate to that girls do not. And the question is, do our schools recognize that, right? And so that's a great point to attend to, because people have to ask themselves, if the suspension rate is, let's say, 5%, yet 20%, and I don't know that's the case, 20% of the kids who are suspended are Indigenous, then you have to ask yourself, well, why is that, right? And so there's a number of these things that the committee looked at and said, school district, have a hard look at it. You might learn some things. You might learn some things about how you address that. So, I mean, are you still on the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you might be able to speak to that, because I wasn't there when this was developed.
Well, I think another area that has been of concern, I think it's a concern, should be a concern for all of our schools, is attendance. And what do? We punish. We discipline for not attending. So if you don't attend, then, maybe you get suspended it makes no sense. And so it was wrapping our heads around that whole issue of, okay, they're not attending, we have to figure out why. And so I think we enlisted our vice principals, at least at our middle schools, to try and help us out with that. So to me, my immediate thought was around the kids who aren't attending. And it's not a discipline issue, it's something else that we have to figure out.
And we learned with restorative action that, way back when we had a significant number of suspensions, and they were, disproportionate number of boys, we learned that when we take restorative action, we can actually teach these boys how to behave, and that recidivism rates dropped tremendously. And so there are things that you learn along the way. In our middle schools now, work extensively with ARJA, and as a consequence, we've seen that drop. Well, is there some influence on an Indigenous approach to looking at this that we might get the same result? Right?
Good point. It's good to know that the problems I caused in elementary school are really not my fault then, eh?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Peterson. I'm gonna reflect on Trustee Latham first for a moment. Just your comments, because, and Superintendent Godden can attest to this, that discussion around the attendance has been ongoing at the Aboriginal table for almost 2 decades. And it's still one that's, I'm glad to see that it's still in discussion. I'm sad to see that it still requires discussion to this extent, right? But I'm glad that there's still some work on that. First of all, appreciation to Darlene McDonald. I think she does a fabulous job. I just wanted to bring to the board's attention, because I thought this was interesting regarding Trustee Neufeld's question as well. The BC Human Rights Tribunal, it has a questionnaire that's out, which has got a deadline for July 10th in 2019, but they're seeking Indigenous peoples to participate in a survey about their experiences either using or deciding not to use the BC human rights process. I wanted to just draw one of their highlights out. Indigenous people do not file as many human rights complaints as other people, and the BC Human Rights Tribunal wants to understand why. And I think it actually directly ties into what you raised, Trustee Neufeld, in terms of sometimes when we talk about it, there seems to be about Aboriginal Indigenous people, there's a stigma, even if we don't know that there is maybe or may not be, depending on who we are and what we think. But I think that that's actually going to be a really interesting study in terms of why that is. I'm looking forward to the results actually, because it's not actually a hearing, it's just a survey, it's a study. So
good to know that we're starting to ask the right questions.
Right, and that's where I draw that to.
Why?
Why it's, the Indigenous or the Aboriginal student and their disciplines. I'll send this to the board.
What is the provincial average, as you had mentioned that we're way better, what is that compared to ours?
So, it depends which assessment you look at, but across assessments,
yes,
generally speaking, what we're about 10 percentage points behind non-Indigenous students in terms of the FSA numeracy graduation rates. The provincial average used to be 30 percentage points off, and the gap is closed to anywhere between 15 and 20. So we've gone up, but there are, the whole province has, right? And so it's because of some attention to it for sure, but that's the concern the government has expressed as a part of this, that the gap hasn't closed fast enough, right?
Okay. All right, and we've all voted. Trustee Pauls?
I'm still in the document, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll turn over to Secretary Treasurer Wellstock and Operations.
Question period?
We're at a question period, yes.
It must be the last meeting of the
It must be. I should actually read the agenda, I guess. So we're at our first of our question periods. We have up to 10 minutes to ask questions of anything related to what we've talked about in our agenda. If you have a question, we'd ask you to step up to the podium and ask that question through me, and I may defer to somebody else. So, questions? Anybody have any questions at this point?
it's not.
Okay, the long-awaited operations. I've been trying to get you on.
For a while.
Yeah. Fair way. So we're going to.
Long-awaited and much anticipated.
and much in this-
get carried away.
The first item on my report is the annual budget bylaw. If I could, I would like to get the board to approve the 3 readings, and then the first 2 readings of the budget bylaw, and then I will give a brief overview of the budget.
Second.
Trustee Paul, Trustee Rai, first, or for 3 readings.
Move to approve first reading.
Second.
Trustee
Go ahead.
Rai, Trustee Newfeld,
No, oh, no. I said it louder than she did, but I think she beat me. Ready? Who's so loud?
Trustee Newfeld.
So, question? We're gonna approve all the readings before we hear the,
No, just up to number 2.
right? So we get time to reconsider?
Yes.
Thank
Approve
you.
second reading?
Seconded.
Trustee Newfeld, Trustee Latham, second reading.
Nice and loud.
There we go, we got it.
She had her outside voice today. Okay.
Trustee Rai, were we?
Yeah, no.
Oh, there we go. Okay, and
Now he wants to.
So I will refer to the staff report. So in the staff report, there is information related to the general background information around the budget, information on our strategic plan. Then there is some of the information we've shared in previous meetings around our guiding principles for the budget process and timelines. We detail the major budget assumptions and then get into some of the financial information in the budget that then further breaks into some of our strategic planning alignment for this year. Then details in regard to the operating fund, some of the significant budget changes that have been presented in the last number of months that affect the operating budget. Some information on the accumulated surplus, the operating grants, the 3-year budget plan that takes into account the projected enrollments, the forecast of operating grants and staffing, the listing of our school budget allocations, and then a summary of the special purpose fund and the capital fund. So just quickly on the key driver around enrollment, the forecast of enrollment is up 92 students for next year, and the forecast for the next 2 years is a continual growth of that enrollment. So we would expect to see some ongoing staffing costs. We would expect to see continuing pressure in our facilities around capacity utilization. The next piece of information, the most significant part of our budget, is around staffing. And so I've included a table in the staff report that illustrates the total number of staff by the function they perform, so teachers and principals, vice principals, and our support staff, how many that were included in the current year's budget, and then the forecast for 2019-20, and then you can see what the proposed changes. And this includes all funds, so this includes people that are assigned into the operating budget, but as well the special purpose funds. So if the classroom enhancement fund, for example, we employ about 110 teachers out of the classroom enhancement fund, and that is the fund we get for the restorative collective agreement rights. Included in the budget is a 1.75% salary increase for basically for all staff. It's effective in May for teachers and support staff, effective in July for everyone else. So the total consolidated revenue of the district's a little over $222 million. Total expenses of $225 million. And you can see that requires us to transfer $1.85 million of accumulated surplus into the budget in order to balance. Leaves us with a total consolidated deficit for the year of around $700,000, which is in the capital fund. And really is that difference between deferred capital contributions and our amortization. So, and that is something that is allowed by the ministry to have a deficit if it's contained in the capital fund. So in the staff report, I do detail some information around the effect on surplus, So I'm gonna get to that right now. The effect on surplus, the $1.85 million, leaving us with a projected surplus at the end of June 2020 of around $5.6 million. So we're within, in the current year, we expect our surplus at the end of June of this year to be within that range that we think our unrestricted surplus should be. But with the projected use of the $1.85 million for 2019-20, we get that unrestricted surplus drops below the 2 to 3% of operating expenditures that we typically would like to see as our cushion in that surplus. So on page number 9 and 10 of the staff report, it outlines the strategic alignment and the allocation of resources in the current year and the allocation of resources for next year as well. And you can see that the total allocation over the term of this strategic plan is slightly over $3 million in additional resources. On page 12, I'll just highlight some of the significant budget changes. We've been through these in previous meetings and they haven't really changed. So really, I've already shared the change in staffing. The one change around including the board's Strong Start that is operated now, that's just become part of the operating fund budget. And the significant investment in the new elementary school in Eagle Mountain, where in 2019-20 budget, there's a $900,000 transfer from operations towards that capital project, and our total contribution is slated at $2.5 million. On page 17, you get a picture of the operating grant and the calculation of the operating grant for next year. And page 18 is the 3-year plan. And you can see that for each of the next, the 2 following years after next year, the deficits are quite small. The deficit in 2020-21 is forecasted around $320,000 and $220 the following year. So we're in that range of virtually having a balanced budget, and I think that going forward we'll be able to work those numbers out in a way that we'll be able to manage that, reducing that decline in our accumulated surplus. Page 19 gives you the picture of our allocations to departments and to schools. So it shows their total allocation, and that includes the staffing allocation. And while that's a centralized allocation, we do track it at the school level. So this is not a picture of the discretionary money that these schools and departments have, but rather a picture of their entire budget. Our school allocation formula is listed following that. And then on page 22 and 23 is some information around our special purpose fund.
Can I ask a question on that, just because there are 2 acronyms I didn't understand in that list, and that's I'm sure as soon as you say them, I'll say, aha, where are they? I'm just finding it here.
OLEP.
Pardon me? OLEP. Yeah.
Official Languages Program.
Okay, and then one other one.
PRP?
Yeah.
Original Resource Program.
Thank you very much. And they both make sense.
It's always the same 2
There we go. You know, I knew when I asked the question that it was going to be obvious, but
spell it out.
And don't think for a minute that I don't have to ask the Director of Finance every year what those stand for.
Well, I can hardly wait till next year. I'll ask the same question, I'm sure. But thank you.
So you can see in the special purpose fund, I'll highlight a couple of things there. There's money for the annual facility grant. Note that part of our annual facility grant is contained within the special purpose fund. The other part is within the capital fund. The classroom enhancement fund is the biggest part of the current special purpose fund at just under $9 million. And school generated funds, $5.8 million, is money that is the transactions at a school level. That is also contained within the special purpose fund. I'm giving you information on the annual facilities grant. The total annual facilities grant, both from the special purpose fund and from the capital fund, is just slightly over $3 million. And the Director of Facilities has a number of projects that that are sort of multi-year projects. He's got a 5-year, 10-year painting plan, flooring plan, so these are things that fit within those plans. And finally, the capital fund is on page 24. I've outlined some of the risks to the budget on page 25, and I'll just highlight one important one. While it doesn't affect the coming year, it affects future years, and that is a potential change to our funding model. And I think that we have to stay abreast of any potential changes there, so that we're able to adjust course, if you will, in the coming year and in the future year around any changes to that funding model. And I've given you a complete list of all the goals, objectives, and strategies that are contained within our overall strategic plan, and there's a page and a half of information there just as summary format. So a couple of charts that I want to talk about. If you look, there's one that shows the makeup of our revenues and expenditures. And it's not surprising that 90% of our revenues are provincial grants. And then when you look at our total expenditures, 82%, a little over 82% in instruction, and this again is for all funds, and 2.4% on district administration. And it's our target to keep that district admin cost under 3%. So we're well under that target number. The next chart I'll show you is just breaks down the difference between salaries and benefits and supplies and services, and so you get a picture of how much discretionary spending there is in the district. We've got 11% of our budget left to spend on all of the stuff that we need that is not staffing. And within that 11%, we have to pay all our utility costs, we pay for bus fuel, a number of things like that. So you can see that we don't have a big part of our budget left as discretionary spending.
Can you find $10 to keep the AC running here?
Well, then if you want to turn that knob, the air conditioning will come off.
No, left, down there, that one.
Thank you.
And then we break down that salary, that's 71% of our budget that is salaries. You see how that breaks down by the different area of salaries, so teachers and principals and support staff, etc. So if the Director of Finance would, I would like maybe her to walk through the information that's contained within the ministry budget document.
So the ministry document is.
Can we come on up and you get comfy at the podium here, okay? Now you're on camera.
Oh.
And you're looking wonderful.
Okay. So the ministry document is an attachment in your agenda, and it's a standard format that's been used in the province for a number of years now, and all school districts report under the same format to the minister. So just to step through it very quickly, the first page of interest is page 3 of that document. It's your annual budget bylaw, so it provides a summary of what you're approving tonight. Statement 2 is the following document, page 2, and this will correspond with when you receive your annual financial statement with the balance sheet. So you'll see correlations to that. Scrolling down to Schedule 2. The schedules are in sequence. Anyone that starts with a 2 is our operating fund, so that's the basic operation of the school district, from the teachers in the classroom, the utilities, etc. So Schedule 2 itself is a summary of the revenue and expenses. Schedule 2A is detail on the revenue. Schedule 2B and 2C are information on the expenditures and how they're distributed. And both 2B and 2C equal the same amount, they're just represented in 2 different ways. Scrolling down to page 810 is the beginning of Schedule 3, And Schedule 3s are your special purpose funds, so including the annual facilities grant, the classroom enhancement fund, community links, etc. So Schedule 3 itself is the summary, and Schedule 3A is the detail by each one of those special purpose grants. And then Schedule 4 is a summary of the changes in our capital fund. When you receive your annual financial statement, audited financial statements, there'll be more Schedule 4s that provide further details into things. But from a budget level, this is the only one that we complete at this point. So.
Questions? No, comments? Trustee Newfeld.
I'm going to state the obvious, Chair Peterson. I find it troubling that we have to take operational funds and put it towards capital expenditures. For a district that prides itself in being fiscally responsible, and when you have a small surplus that you need to have in the bank, and for the ministry to claw away at that and put us into possibly into a financial challenge for the next year or two, I find it troubling. But there's not, we don't have a vote in that. We have to respond to it, and so I just want to thank staff for what they're doing and how they're aware of that and the change that might be coming down, but it is troubling that we have to do that.
Thank you. Trustee Wilson?
Would you like a mover for the third and final reading?
Yes, let's do that, please.
So moved that the school district number 34 Abbotsford annual budget bylaw for fiscal year 2019-2020, specifying a total budget amount of $225,437,538 be given third reading, reconsidered, and finally passed and adopted on this 19th day of June 2019 with appreciation to Linda Peters.
Thank you, Trustee Wilson. Seconded Trustee Anderson. And voting buttons go here.
So I'll just take this opportunity to thank the Director of Finance for all of her work and all of her the work of her department and putting up with me for 3 months as we developed the budget. I know that we have lots of schedules to go through and lots of different challenges that get addressed during that time, so I just appreciate all your work.
And for sharing, and for sharing your wisdom with a huge online audience. Okay, thank you. Thank you so very much. Okay. School site acquisition charge, bylaw number 21, capital bylaw 21. Again, we're being asked to
approve all 3 readings.
approve all 3.
Move to have all 3 readings.
Okay, I think I heard Trustee Wilson, Trustee Rye.
You do the first 2 readings before the third. I'll just do a brief.
Move first reading.
Okay, Trustee Rye, Trustee Newfeld. Trustee Rye, oh, there you go, okay. Oh, you must be further away from, that must be it.
No, it takes a
reading.
little bit longer.
Seconded.
Trustee Newfeld, Trustee Latham for second reading.
Okay. So at our last meeting, you approved the eligible school site proposal, and that was referred to the City of Abbotsford, Fraser Valley Regional District for their input. They have both provided they've gone through the process and they've provided support of the eligible school site proposal. The next step for us is to pass the school site acquisition charge bylaw, which is what you're doing tonight. It is done by formula once the eligible school site proposal is completed. So we will see our school site acquisition charge that right now is a charge that has the average charge to the base units of $355. That's part of the overall cost charges, development cost charges that the municipality levies to developers. Will increase from $355 to $501. Well within still below many of our neighboring districts. I think it's still going to be the lowest school site acquisition charge of any of our neighboring districts. And So the step for you now is to, say this gets approved by formula, and we will send this information to the city, and following a period of time, the city will begin to implement this new school site acquisition.
Question?
Trustee Anderson, and Trustee Wilson, Trustee Anderson.
In reading this, I think this is the area, it said that, we're looking at 10 hectares. Is that right? For school acquisition?
For additional land,
4.56.
we're looking for an additional,
I thought the total was 10. Now, can you tell me approximate size of Bakerview, so I have a visual of?
I actually don't know what Bakerview is. We need 4.5 additional hectares.
Yes.
Because we just need to add on to an existing site and one new site. I'm not exactly sure how big Bakerview is.
It's a big footprint.
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Wilson,
Thank you. Could you just remind me, through the chair to the Secretary Treasurer, if you could remind me, please, what percentage we're requesting an increase of? I can't do the math in my head tonight. Come on. And apparently,
You know, I think
That
it was
is
maybe
new.
even in the city's report to council.
perhaps.
The manager of capital planning and I both attended city council meeting. So it's an increase of school site acquisition charges, a 40% increase.
Thank you.
And have we had feedback, I guess, from anywhere else about this?
No.
No.
I will say that one of the big drivers of this calculation is the cost of land. In 2007, the land cost was $1.1 million per hectare. It is now $3.1 million per hectare, so it's increased 3 times since that time. And that is the single biggest driver in as part of the school site acquisition charge.
And there are other districts which have hiked theirs or requested increases significantly. And part of the reason, it's my understanding, is because we have other parcels of land
Yes.
that we've held for a long time.
So land use charge right now is 590, Chilliwack's is 646, Mission is 800, the maximum allowable is 800.
And these are, sorry, I just need to follow through. And with that thought, because I have heard elsewhere in other districts that ultimately this is a dollar value that goes to the home purchaser because the developer will pass that into the cost of construction. So inadvertently, it's the purchaser, the taxpayer that bears that cost. Again, and it all comes from the same taxpayer, whether it's at municipal level or provincial or our desk. So it's just more of a comment than anything.
and my understanding too is if we are required to raise, I think you explained that, 30% of the cost of the land? And then should this charge get to that 30%, then we no longer charge it.
That's right. Once we collect the full amount of our required 35% contribution, then we stop collecting.
So I wonder if there's that person that we recognize as the one that not have to do it.
I would think that this will come forward again in a future year as part of our capital plan, that we're in the place where we'll be continually monitoring our requirement for school sites. So I would think that in the next couple of years, it depends on the growth patterns that the city experiences, that we may be looking at potentially some other sites, but time will tell.
Okay, looking for, unless other questions? Okay, all right.
With that, the school district number 34, Abbotsford capital bylaw number 21, school site acquisition charge, specifying Abbotsford School District has consulted with the City of Abbotsford and Fraser Valley Regional District to be given third reading, reconsidered, and finally passed and adopted on this 18th day of June 2019.
Thank you, Trustee Paul, seconded Trustee Anderson.
Thank you.
Chair Peterson?
Yes.
I'd just like to, I think we should extend our appreciation to the director or the manager of facilities for her work on this through the secretary treasurer for getting positions and titles at the
Manager
moment.
of capital planning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to see that passed on.
Thank you, very good, yes. Good. And if you could please pass that thank you along, we appreciate it very much.
Well, I would like just to thank the board for your a couple of years ago approving us having a manager of capital planning where we have somebody that can spend the time and not do this off the side of their desk and devote the time and energy to work in this. We're with our district being at 99.2% capacity, there is huge need for facilities. So it's an area where we really need to stay on top of, and not just for new land and new facilities, but replacement facilities. So additions to existing facilities. There are a number of facilities you'll see in the capital plan that we're looking at additions and just making some of these sites bigger, even a replacement. Dodson's listed on our list of replacement projects, and we'll replace it at a bigger capacity than it currently is, just because of the infill around the area. So it's been great having somebody to devote the energy to that area.
Okay, 5-year capital plan submission.
So the 5-year capital plan is before you. I will entertain any questions. It is just approval by resolution, not a bylaw. I've outlined in the staff report the different areas of the capital plan. In the summary document, you can see that there are a number of you see the listing of projects. We've still got 2 projects listed in our seismic projects. One is Abbotsford Traditional Secondary. We're working with the ministry on that at this time. The next one is a smaller project at Bakerview, so that will come forward in due course. The expansion projects are virtually the same as last year, except that Eagle Mountain has come off the list, seeing that it's been given approval. And the order has changed a little bit, that Yale has dropped down a little bit and Fraser moved up, and Mowat has moved up on that list. So you see Mowat on the list now. Mowat was not on the list last year, but based on the growth patterns that we see and again, having somebody be able to spend time looking at where these students are coming from, Mowat's on the list now for an increase in capacity. So you see what the proposed changes to capacity are in that list. Any questions on the expansion projects?
So looking at the one respect to what you were just talking about, the increase in capacity from 1,200 to 1,500, we have on numerous occasions already had in excess of 1,500 in that building. So that means the capacity of the hard shell without portables.
That's correct. All of our capacities listed are without portables.
Okay, that was question number 1. And question number 2 is, are we just still in the estimating phase? There's no value of that project, we just don't have it yet.
That's right.
Okay, other questions?
Move to approve.
Trustee Ryan? Thank you. Second. Trustee Neufeld, thank you.
Move to approve with thanks, of course.
Sorry?
Move to approve with thanks.
Yes, all those things. And as I sort of made mention at the start, I can't believe we're talking about schedules for next year, but the proposed public board meeting schedule for 2019 meeting.
So moved.
Trustee Wilson.
Second.
Trustee Pauls. And Character Abbotsford Conference, Building Our Foundation. I'm turning that, oh, you're going to do that as well, all right.
I don't have much to say to the staff reports for you, and I'll take any questions if you have any. This is it, as in the last, it was similar to the approval given at the last conference.
Yeah. Was that the amount that we paid last year?
Yes.
Question?
Yes.
I can move the recommendation, but I do have a question as well.
Yes, moved by Trustee Wilson with a question. Second. Trustee Neufeld, your question?
I think there was a question before when a liquor license has been requested for Abbotsford Senior Secondary, that it's away from students, non-accessible, outside school hours, etc.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And also a request for this to be added to our calendars.
Yes, please.
With the 5 invites you got from trustee.
Yeah.
Not enough.
It wasn't 5, it was 10. I got 10.
Apparently it's 4 days long.
Yeah.
So, just one slight
Because I only got
thing for you to
You
know.
got 4.
At the last public board meeting, we changed the October non-instructional day to a week later. So this conference is actually a week later. The date that you have here is incorrect.
Oh.
Right? Is it? Yes. Well, we made it incorrect by virtue of changing when the October non-instructional day is. So we'll just have to make that. I'm just saying that if you're going to put it in your calendar, put it a week later.
So do not accept invites from trustee Neufeld.
No.
We'll make the correction, but I
It
just
was a
thought I
malfunction of
pointed
the
to
email
you.
system, it wasn't my fault. It ain't my fault, you know that song?
So the next one's on the
You were sending it to
sponsorship.
Cindy as well.
Okay, again, we are being asked to sponsor at the same level as last year. Trustee Pauls, trustee Anderson. And, for goodness sakes. So, it looks like we're at trustee announcement time before our last question period. So, lots of things going on. I mean, the list is endless, but with trustee Neufeld.
I'll start, yeah, I mean, obviously, we all went to grads, but I have to say again, Bakerview and, you know, that's, I think they say their 7th, 8th year at Bakerview, and before that it was ACE, right?
Yeah.
In 2010, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. And, again, just, you know, it's always my favorite, but I also wanted to mention that it's, I think it's New Beginnings' 30th year. And they had 12 young mothers that graduated this year, and if you can imagine, not just getting yourself ready, but getting a bundle or two ready and trotting off to school and doing the work and then picking up your child again and going through all that. So I just, I really appreciate the district and the support that we give these young ladies. I don't know what it's gonna be like once they graduate. I hope we still have a net to catch them in the first year when they're gone, but I just know that it means the world to them, and even our students at Bayview. Just the way that staff knows how to encourage them to get the most out of them is amazing. So,
Trustee Ryan.
Like you said, we attended a lot of grads, but just to mention Rick Hansen, they had their first group of science and business students go through this year. And boy, was there a buzz there, because it was different. So it's good to know that something that the board put in there is now producing some results, and some of those kids were, some of the scholarships they got, woof, like they were, I've never heard of those scholarships, but they got it, so I don't know what they are.
nice.
That was good, it was cool.
Okay, others? Well, I wasn't, I can go with trustee Wilson and then trustee Anderson. Okay.
I actually wanted to defer to trustee Neufeld because he's liaison.
Go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah.
So today I provided, today is actually my first convocation this year. So at 1 o'clock at Abbotsford Virtual School. I am not the trustee liaison, which is why I was trying to defer to trustee Neufeld. We did have to swap our convocations this year, unfortunately, due to my own personal work commitment. However, what's that? I have, it was a pleasure to provide remarks. It's always a pleasure to do the virtual school. About 30 graduates, yet there were only 7 in attendance. And their valedictorian, worth noting, is 16 years of age, graduating early, and he's an up-and-coming judo championship.
He's already a champ.
He's already a champ in British Columbia, and of course he represents Abbotsford, so what more could we ask for? So, and Trustee Neufeld was in attendance because as I noted in my remarks, it's something he finds very near and dear is convocation and the success of students, so just, thank you.
2,800 students they meet the needs up, right?
Approximately, yes. And I will be doing
And that's from 5 years old to 85 years
84,
84.
with the oldest graduate being 75, being Christine Weeb.
Yeah.
The school does celebrate it 90 years in the same address next year for a reminder.
Yeah.
Can't promote it enough. And I am doing Asia Sumas next week. The last one of the year.
So that's the last one.
Just on, just on what Trustee Wilson said. I did AVS last year, and there was I wouldn't say a kid, it was mid-20s. He was one of the lighthouse keepers from one of the 3 lighthouses.
Yes.
And he graduated last year in BC, right?
Yes.
Oh, what a cool, just talking to him was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many.
Is there such a thing? As a
Yeah,
lighthouse?
there's only 3 lighthouses anymore in BC now. There was hundreds before, but I think there's only 3, and he was one of them. And he graduated, he was maybe, not mid-20s, maybe late 20s.
Yes.
Yeah, that was really cool to talk to him.
That'd be an interesting job.
Yeah.
That's another topic.
Lots
Trustee
of room
Anderson.
to spend.
I just want to mention about Bakerview again in the graduation. I was there as an observer because I just appreciate all the work that the teachers and support staff have done, and especially New Beginnings too. But all the bursaries that were handed out, they just kept going and going and going. But one I thought was particular. There was a gal there who graduated, and she got a $1,000 bursary, and she said $1,000.
Yeah.
So it really meant a lot to her. And it was exciting just being there.
All the more reason to recognize the Abbotsford Community Foundation, who are a big part of most of that money. Others, yes?
I'll go
Let's
next.
see later.
So I went to MOAS grad. I don't know how many graduates, over 300, with military precision. There just wasn't a space anywhere in the program. Those kids were across the stage, and yeah, it was 3 hours, which I thought was pretty good. Yeah. Today I wasn't planning on it, but I remembered that ATSS was doing an inquiry project with their grade 10s, and I just love it when students engage like that. So we were divided up into small groups, and as our superintendent mentioned, it was Invisible Voices, which I just thought was an incredible title. And I so appreciated the work that the students did, and their transparency in terms of not just the project that they had chosen and the reasons why, but how difficult it is for some of them to be in that setting and sharing the way that they were today. Yeah, just really, really wonderful aha moments, I guess, for everybody, the adults and the students. And, you know, if we think about the capstone project and what kids have to do with that, this really is, I think, a great way to prepare kids for, you know, that aspect and for their futures, to be able to talk to people and to share ideas. Yeah, so I really enjoyed that. And I enjoyed our retirement dinner. I really enjoyed it. We were sort of at the back of the bus, but yeah, I thought it was, I always learn so much about the individuals that I didn't know. And so, you know, appreciate the people who were presenting on behalf of the retirees, and of course the accumulation of over 500 years of service, I think. 500, I can't remember what the number was.
585.5. I did the math. I still remember that number. As a child.
You do say so. Thank you.
Yeah, you had a comment.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I think trustees, you got a look at the capstone project, because some of our schools have gotten out ahead of it, but wait till next year. You're gonna see kids across the district now doing this, and it's a testament to our teachers and the redesigned curriculum where you have kids now talking about the learning in regional ways. So I would invite you to try to go to as many of those as you can, because of course, as you know, so much of this is the authentic audience, somebody engaging with them on their thinking and learning. So yeah.
So we didn't know we were all gonna do the update on our schools, but since everybody else did, we all did all of the group things. I think we've been to 7 collective functions already this month with all of the retirements and things, and I had the Abbey Senior grad this year, so we're all back to square one if we were on from two cycles or however many ago where I started. Anyways, everybody's at different times, and it's been a long time since I did an Abbey grad, and it was a reminder to me of what, as all of our schools are, how unique the culture is, and how that community in that school looks after its kids, and how meaningful the stage presentations are, that even if it takes a little bit longer, there's a comment read about every student, written by every student. It's not just the name and the presentation and away you go, and we've had conversation about that over the years, about sometimes that's the only time some of those kids are ever gonna have the spotlight, and just give them their moment and let them say their thing and have their shining moment. Not everybody gets a scholarship, not everybody gets that chance to celebrate, so I just really appreciated the time and attention for every student that walked across the stage. And interestingly, I was compelled, we all think very hard on how we write our speeches for grad. This year I felt like doing something different, and I did. And it blended very, very well with the school. I kind of had an Aboriginal cultural focus tie-in with Panther Abbey culture, and posed some community similarities in some of the things that we did. And as it turned out, we had, there's 2 Aboriginal champions that came out of Abbey Senior this year, and one young man that stood up and did the actual welcome, was had his blanket on and his ceremonial everything. He was one of the grad students in the grad class, got to do that, and so my theme, not knowing any of that followed that, I felt, sometimes you get those little niggling sixth senses of what I'm going to take a risk and do something different, and it just was meant to be. So I felt very pleased with that, and how it worked out for the grad, and how it honored the kids there by the culture that they have. So I was very pleased to have that this year.
Well, I most certainly then must talk about my experience at Bakerview, Robert Bigman grad. And again, like all of you, it feels so good. I mean, I'm an old fart, and it makes me feel real good that when I see the young people coming across and all the wonderful things that are being said about them, and we're in really good shape with these people that are graduating from our schools. So I most certainly completely enjoyed that. And I'm going to come back to the enhancement agreement and the signing of that. I think that was a very, very special day for our school district, and and the cooperation between our Indigenous partners and our school district is probably better than I could ever imagine it have been in the last while. So we've come such a long ways, and I think we should be really proud of ourselves as a district, and most certainly proud of the people that are working on our behalf in making all these things work. So that was a really, really great day. All right, with that, we are at our second question period. So again, 10 minutes. If you have a question, we ask you to step forward, state your name, and ask that question through me, and I may defer, especially if it's on budget. Okay, oh, yes. Please, come step forward, please, okay? Yeah, come on forward. And it is related to our It is
yeah,
related
it's all related.
to our agenda.
So, I'm just trying to make sense of some things, and I've been trying to make sense of the whole budget stuff for a while now, because being at the BC PAC meeting in Vancouver, the ministry presented a really big presentation on the funding model, and as a parent, I have a really hard time trying to figure out who to talk to about where I think we need to put more money. So I don't know, I know you came to a PAC meeting and you talked about how to get, and I think you do a good job as a district putting that information out there. But I would love somehow to understand the flow of it all a bit better. Because I feel like every problem that I see in our schools, it always comes back to funding. There's just no money for that. But then I also learned at the BC PAC meeting that when you ask the right questions and you push hard enough, it's interesting how money can be found.
So I'm gonna
so my
start off good.
question,
We're waiting for that question.
so my
Yes.
question for you is, where would you point me to understand the flow of it better? Can you help me? Is that making sense?
And you're actually asking me that
No, I'm
question.
asking the man
Well,
who-
it should go through me. in
Oh, sorry,
protocol.
okay.
And you didn't say who you were either.
Oh,
so
sorry.
it's
Okay, my
fine.
name is Candy.
And I know you
Yeah.
can do that. So I'll defer
So-
that to the secretary
My
treasurer.
glasses on.
I
Yeah,
would be
secretary
happy
treasurer.
to explain
Yeah.
it to you.
Okay. Right now?
If you came to see me sometime,
So I could do that.
you
I could
certainly
approach you for a meeting and do that.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to do that, and thank you. My second question that has to do with the agenda is, somebody brought up how many kids were at the virtual school, 2,800. I'd like to know if anybody knows what were the numbers, what was that number last year compared to this year? Is it increasing the number of students in virtual school?
And you're asking me that question, and I can
Sorry.
probably again defer that, but I think we've increased.
Yes, we've seen our head counts, because there's a difference between the head count at virtual school and the full-time equivalency involving many students take fewer than 8 courses that they would take in a regular school. So we have a larger head count enrollment than the full-time equivalent enrollment. But it has, I think, it's been fairly stable, I would say. I don't think we've seen huge increases. It's maybe gone up a little bit, but it's been relatively stable over the last number of years.
And my last question would be to the entire board. Hearing about you visiting the graduations and doing that, I think that's wonderful. And I'd like to know if there are things happening at schools, do you guys have to have a personal invite to come? Or why don't I see more trustees walking our hallways and seeing what's going on at our schools? Because as a parent, I have the privilege of spending a lot of time there, and there are a lot of things going on in our schools that need a lot of attention. And I don't think it's always the men or the teachers. It's just things that I was trying to find on the budget about where money's being allocated to support staff and EAs. As a parent, I'm considering maybe pulling my child out of public education because of the lack of support staff and more EAs, because I'm seeing how taxing it is to our teachers, and our classrooms are so big that I don't feel like my child's getting adequate support. So I would like to know why you guys can come and see that more yourselves.
Our protocol is, with very few exceptions, our protocol is that we need to be invited. We're not, it's not for us to walk in and disturb the education in the building, as it would be with any guest in the building, without being invited. So we
And
look for invitation.
Who would invite you, Chair?
The principal. It would go through the principal in the school. Or the PAC. Absolutely.
Teachers invite us to
Teachers invite us, but it's with permission of the principal. The principal is a person, or in the case of a PAC meeting, of course, PAC can invite.
Thank you.
Okay? And in fact, I think most of us ask to be invited to PAC meetings.
It's a letter on the website.
Pardon me?
There's a letter that goes out to
Yeah,
PAC
there's a letter,
presidents.
so, we try not to interfere unless we're asked.
That's good to know.
Okay.
That's good to know.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I guess we should be running out the doors and say, school's out, at least for us. Yeah, well, I know, we do have more work to do tonight, but, thank you for sticking through this last meeting. We may or may not be meeting through the summer, depending on whether things arise, but, this is our last scheduled formal meeting.
It'll happen.
All right, thank you.